Good morning.
Good morning.
I want to welcome you in the name of our Lord Jesus Christ to this time of worship. Whether you're joining us here at the last minute, or you've been sitting here for a long time, or you're joining us online, wherever the Spirit, whenever the Spirit moves us to gather in worship, the invitation is to open our hearts to God and to the presence of the Spirit. And so today we are beginning a new sermon series, and the sermon series is called Inflation and the Cycle of Blessings, Holy Currencies. It is based also on a book by the title of Holy Currencies, and talking about this flow of grace, of God's grace. The book is by Eric Law, and the invitation is to look at the currencies of our lives beyond just the money. Because when we think about resources, what do we tend to think about? We tend to think about money or possessions when we think of the word, especially currency. But the invitation of this sermon this sermon series is to look at what's happening in our world, but also spiritually, to look at how God has gifted us with so many gifts, because we tend to think of money as the measure of our success or the measure of the success of our economy. We tend to think that it is only when we are successful financially, having a lot of money, do we have enough resources to feel happy or secure. And inflation, of course, has right now the rapid inflation, the rising inflation, has made us feel more a sense of scarcity, which tends to isolate us or to make us feel more focused on the things we don't have. And so instead of living in the abundance of God's creation, we end up focusing on all the things we do not have. Every time I turn the TV on or watch news from different news sources or I'm reading articles, there's always this current theme of inflation, rising inflation, and how it's impacting everything around us. So the invitation of this sermon series, not to look at it from an economic point of view, but from a spiritual point of view, to look at the currencies of our lives, to remember the abundance of our lives, to embrace and celebrate what we already have, what God has gifted us with so generously. And so the 6 currencies are relationships, truth, wellness, money, time and place, and gracious leadership. And each of them is only valuable when it is exchanged, when it is shared. So think about it even from a money point of view. Money wouldn't have any value to it if people stopped exchanging it. Think about it. All the money you would have in your pocket would just be useless. It would be just a piece of tissue in your pocket. But when you think about the value that comes from sharing, from the flow, this is the invitation, is to think of the flow of these relationships and our thoughts about wellness, the taking stock of where we live, our communities, the time we have. Sometimes the best gift you give to someone is your time, by being there for them, or they give you something in terms of their time too. When you think about those pieces and how you see how much wealth we actually have as human beings. And today, speaking about Eric Law, he talks about this relationship and the flow and how we can do more with less. In the sense, if we expand our understanding of our currencies. He talked about a time in his life when he grew up thinking that they were rich in his family. It was because they had people over for dinner almost every night. It was that sense of community. There were about 12 to 15 people that would show up for dinner every night. So he assumed that they must have had a lot of money. And then later on in life, when he was talking to his mother, and she'd say, "What do you mean? We didn't have a lot of money. Some nights I would have to make do with $3 to feed 12 to 15 people." So he thought maybe because his mom was really good at shopping or cooking. But then he discovered it was more. People were sharing. And especially when it came to the last part of the meal, especially if it was a piece of meat, no one wanted to take that last part. oh, you eat it, Grandma, you need it more. Or Grandma would say, no, you need it more, you're growing. So there was that sense that no one wanted to touch that piece, and as a result, that was the basis for the meal for the following day. So it was always that sense of blessing. So he learned that a spirituality that assumes that there is enough, and therefore it is okay to have less than the other. So he learned this kind of spirituality, that people had more of that sharing spirit. So when we think about our relationships and the connections we have, today the invitation is to look at it as a way to think about the resources of our lives, to think about the inflation, to approach life even in a time when there is a sense of lack. We come with a sense of enough, of abundance. So I invite you at this time to take a deep breath and prepare your hearts for worship. And let us join in the call to worship. When we are lonely and feeling lost, Jesus calls us and brings us hope and peace. When we are angry and frustrated, Jesus heals our wounds and calms our tempers. When we are sorrowful and broken, Jesus binds us our wounds and with healing love. Come, let us worship the one who cares so abundantly for us. Please rise as you are able to join me in singing hymn number 422, God whose giving knows no ending.
God whose giving knows no ending, from your rich and endless store, nature's wonder, Jesus' wisdom, costly cross, grave's shattered door, gifted by you, we turn to you, offering up ourselves in praise. Thankful song shall rise forever, gracious donor of our days. Skills and time are ours for pressing toward the goals of Christ your Son, all at peace in health and freedom, races joined, the church made one. Now direct our daily labor, lest we strive for self alone. Born with talents, make us servants, fit to answer at your throne. Treasure to you have entrusted, gain through powers your grace conferred, ours to use for home and kindred, and to spread the gospel word. Open wide our hands in sharing
we come to this time in the worship service when we share the joys and concerns of the community of faith. If you have something you would like to share, please raise your hand and share it. Yes, Sandy. You are so glad to see Carol Smith. We are too, all of us. See, they're teasing you just because you came in just at the last minute. Yes. But we are glad that you have recovered enough, on a serious note, that you are here for that. Yes.
We do have a joy and a concern. Our joy is that our place in Florida was spared.
Your place in Florida was in good shape. Yes, yes.
But where we live was a direct hit. We were near Fort Myers Beach. We had
Yes.
and our dear friends that live there, many of them have lost everything.
Yes.
We heard about a storm surge. 13 feet of water came up, left 6 feet of water in their homes. And the walls, everything just absorbed. It's unreal down here. So prayers for our many, many friends and many people in the area.
So prayers for all the people down in Florida, especially your friends who have lost their places. And it's interesting to reflect on that because it's all about community, especially in these communities. To have lost that is more than just losing the possessions and where one would live. Yes.
First, my brother who is recovering still from back surgery. Same operation that I had luckily.
Yes.
But he's not a home body. He's driving.
So prayers for Doug Danishevsky's brother who is recovering from surgery, back surgery. 2 months out, but having problems with patience of how long it takes.
He's recovering well.
Right, right, yeah. Well, I don't blame him. It's hard when you're active on the goal. Oh, yes, Carol.
Joked about my surgery, but honestly, it's a joy because it went so extremely well. I'm
So grateful, yes.
been connected with such an amazing doctor, and we are both.
Yes, very grateful for a good surgery. And also a joy today, it's been our prayer of a concern for us with Reverend Bob Kaiser in the hospital at Strong's. He's still there, but he is getting moved on Tuesday to rehab place, to Monroe Community Hospital rehab. So hopefully it's a good sign. They've taken his feeding tube out. He's recovering really well. And so he's very grateful for all the prayers and support and is very happy that he passed his swallowing tests and all the hard stuff after a stroke. So we're very grateful to see him make that journey. And so continue to hold him in your prayers, and we give thanks for the recovery that's already happening. I have a gratitude moment, and that is this week for the school partnership that we have with Jackson Primary. This started about 5 years ago, where we have been intentional to build a relationship with the school, with the administrators, the teachers, having volunteers, responding to special needs. And this week, I want to highlight a need. So this is a part Thanksgiving, but also an invitation. If you like having trick-or-treaters at your place and you never get any, this is your chance. So on the 31st of October in the morning, there are 3 schools that have invited us. Maureen Notaro, the principal, invited us to help with giving out candy to kids, what they call it Community Day. And so there will be, I think, 9 to 10 at Jackson, then 10 to 10:30 at Robert Morris, and then at JK from John Kennedy from, I think, 11 to noon. So you could sign up for any of these slots, or just talk to me if you're interested in handing out candy and looking at all the amazing costumes for the kids. So I'm glad to see Lisa here. Lisa, do you want to say anything about it?
What they do with it is they make it a community helpers day instead of just Halloween. The kids get to wear the costumes, and the police
So Community Helpers Day. So any groups in the community that help others, they come, they're invited and to share this. So it's building community, making visible the people that support the school and that sense of community and especially for the children. So send me a note, call me, text me, talk to me after the service about this. So let us continue in our prayers together. Accept, O God, our thanks and praise for all that you have done for us. We thank you for the splendor of the whole creation, for the beauty of this world, for the wonder of life, and for the mystery of love. We thank you for the blessing of family and friends, and for the loving care which surrounds us on every side. We thank you for giving tasks which demand our best efforts, and for leading us to accomplishments which satisfy and delight us. We thank you also for guiding us through disappointments and failures to find new courage and new ways to love and be loved. Help us to keep the cycle of your love flowing through us by loving and serving as you do. And now we come before God in a time of silence to bring our individual prayers or just to be open to the Spirit. We continue in prayer using the words our Lord Jesus Christ taught us to pray, saying together, Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts, as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen. Amen. So today we look at the gift of the relationships we have in terms of the flow of the cycle of blessings. So it is one of those things that we think about in terms of the inflation and the crisis in the high inflation. Any of you have noticed anything about the inflation in your own personal life? Yeah? How is it affecting you? When you check out at the grocery store, it's a little bit surprising. You're like, hey, wait, when did this happen? What other aspects have you seen people struggle with? Gas, okay. Price of gas. What about people trying to buy a home or rent a home or buy a car? Yeah, a lot of different aspects of this inflation. So it is something we're feeling. You know, usually inflation happens, but at a slower rate. That it's not easy to detect it. Only if you look, you say, okay, 20 years ago, I used to buy the same stuff for such and such. Have you ever had that conversation with a parent or grandparent where they would tell you? My dad would always, I don't know why, his father was a butcher. So always the money was compared to how much meat you can buy. Compared, he would just say, well, I was able to buy, this many kilos of meat for this kind of money, and now I can only buy half a pound or something, silly like that, and just to show us, to help us understand how inflation works. So inflation is about that purchasing power, where the money doesn't buy you as many things as it used to, and the commodities are higher priced. And so the problem, of course, with that is that it is a reality that we all have to contend with, and it is a struggle. But today I want to invite us to look at it as an opportunity for us to reflect on our relationship to all the resources of our lives. In every crisis in one's life, there is an opportunity to see how we can live more deeply, how we can embrace the struggle, to see how we can learn to live with more heart. And so what is this time telling us? What is the inflation leading us to reflect on? And so to think about those currencies that we talked about, to think about especially the currencies that we don't think of usually as currencies. We just take them for granted. That in relationships, think about relationships. Without them, our lives would be so impoverished. And when you think about the political or economic responses to the inflation, they don't deal with the root causes of the issue in terms of the human overconsumption or greed. We always expect the economy to keep growing and growing endlessly. We don't think, how many politicians have you heard this saying to us, we think we need to slow down our consumption? Have you heard that anywhere? I haven't, because it's not a popular thing. What do people think if a politician would stand and say that? Vote them out or don't vote for them. What are they talking about? They want us to live lesser quality life. We want to live more, because that's the promise of our American culture. It tends to be focused on things and consuming more things or producing more things or getting more things for ourselves. It seems like the promise for happiness or for the success of the economy and society. But today I want to invite us to think about other currencies that we can capitalize on and really celebrate and say, live in that sense of abundance instead of feeling like, okay, well, I couldn't afford to buy this kind of thing, or I couldn't afford to live in this kind of place. So the mentality leads you to thinking, I don't have enough. Or I look at somebody else's stuff and think, I wish I could have their stuff. Now, of course, we don't think, are they really happier than me? Most of the time, not true. Most of the time, happiness would have very little to do with possessions. Once you have enough to live on, You're not at the starvation level. It pretty much is the same, whether you buy designer clothes or you just go to a little store and buy something simple. It pretty much does the same thing for you mentally. So today we're looking at the currency of relationships because we know that it is such an important part of who we are, of our lives. When you think about your life, take a second, just a couple of seconds, thinking about the relationships you have. And imagine your life without them. Wouldn't it be amazingly horrible? I mean, it'd be so sad to live without the relationships of our lives. I can't imagine. You can survive a lot of things, but without those key relationships. That's why we have such a hard time when someone we love moves to more life. We just really have this, feeling of deep loss because we connect so deeply through love and through the relationships. So today I want to share with you this some information from this book called The Village Effect by Susan Pinker. And she is a psychologist who studied what makes us happy, basically, what makes us thrive. And she says how face-to-face contact can make us healthier and happier. So she says face-to-face contacts are essential for our wellness. You can't have it any other way. As much as our society focuses on the individual, as much as we're told, you can just live on your own, you don't even have, how many of us now have the option of shopping without having to go to the store? And sometimes it's a necessity. I was very glad for that when we were under quarantine and, couldn't really go to the store because the groceries showed up. And actually, I didn't have to say hi to the person because I didn't want to share anything, so I just left instructions. Leave them by this side of the garage, and I'll come out and get it. So there was no contact. There was no tip given. It was all electronic. And so a lot of things are that way. We're isolating more and more, and options. It feels good. Oh, yes, I don't have to go to the store, or I could watch worship in the comfort of my own home, which is okay for a little bit of time. But then after a while, your social circle gets so small that you feel so isolated. And so this is what Susan Pinker says. In a very short time, we have changed from group-living primates, skilled at reading each other's every gesture and intention, to solitary species, each one of us preoccupied with our own screen. And that is becoming more and more the case. You see sometimes families, they don't want to watch TV together. Because what if I have my own screen? I don't want to watch with you. You are watching a show I don't really like. I'm just going to sit here and watch my own thing. So even things that you used to do in groups, now they're really done in the privacy of our own homes. I know for me, a recent development after COVID was that the presbytery meetings are all now on Zoom. So last month, new pastor at the Third Presbyterian Church decided to gather a group of us. She put out an invitation to all the female pastors in the presbytery to gather for lunch. And I've been seeing a lot of them online. When they walked into the restaurant, I had a hard time recognizing these people. I'm like, who are these? The women that we're supposed to meet? I only recognized one person who, it was Erin Jacobson that I recognized. So I was like, okay, Erin, I'm glad you're here. Now I know I'm at the right restaurant. And it was really fascinating that we'd been meeting together, but there was no sense of knowing each other because it's on a screen. And I don't know if you've gone to those meetings. Once the meeting is over, you click the button and that's it. There's no chit-chat after. There's no getting to sit next to someone and mutter under your breath about whatever is being said. Like none of that is available anymore. So that sense of community is being replaced by this, sense of we just got to get the business of the presbytery done. So Susan Pinker talks about building your village. an important concept that each of us, we need a village. You know, we tend to talk about it takes a village to raise a child. It takes a village for each person. We need each other. We are this is how we're programmed, and we diminish as human beings when we don't get with other people face to face. And so here's a video of a TED Talk that she gave on this subject.
Here's an intriguing fact. In the developed world, everywhere, women live an average of 6 to 8 years longer than men do. 6 to 8 years longer. That's like a huge gap. In 2015, The Lancet published an article showing that men in rich countries are twice as likely to die as women are at any age. But there is one place in the world where men live as long as women. It's a remote mountainous zone, a blue zone, where super longevity is common to both sexes. This is the blue zone in Sardinia, an Italian island in the Mediterranean between Corsica and Tunisia, where there are 6 times as many centenarians as on the Italian mainland, less than 200 miles away. There are 10 times as many centenarians as there are in North America. It's the only place where men live as long as women. But why? My curiosity was piqued. I decided to research the science and the habits of the place. And I started with the genetic profile. I discovered soon enough that genes account for just 25% of their longevity. The other 75% is lifestyle. So what does it take to live to 100 or beyond? What are they doing right? What you're looking at is an aerial view of Villa Grande. It's a village at the epicenter of the Blue Zone where I went to investigate this. And as you can see, architectural beauty is not its main virtue. Density is. Tightly spaced houses, interwoven alleys and streets. It means that the villagers' lives constantly intersect. And as I walked through the village, I could feel hundreds of pairs of eyes watching me from behind doorways and curtains, from behind shutters. Because like all ancient villages, Villa Grande couldn't have survived without this structure, without its walls, without its cathedral, without its village square, because defense and social cohesion defined its design. Urban priorities changed as we moved towards the Industrial Revolution because infectious disease became the risk of the day. But what about now? Now, social isolation is the public health risk of our time. Now, a third of the population says they have 2 or fewer people to lean on. But let's go to Villa Grande now as a contrast to meet some centenarians. Meet Giuseppe Marino, he's 102, a supercentenarian and a lifelong resident of the village of Villa Grande. He was a gregarious man. He loved to recount stories, such as how he lived like a bird from what he could find on the forest floor during not 1 but 2 world wars. How he and his wife, who also lived past 100, raised 6 children in a small, homey kitchen where I interviewed him. Here he is with his sons, Angelo and Domenico, both in their 70s and looking after their father, and who were, quite frankly, very suspicious of me and my daughter who came along with me on this research trip. Because the flip side of social cohesion is a wariness of strangers and outsiders. But Zio Giuseppe, he wasn't suspicious at all. He was a happy-go-lucky guy, very outgoing, with a positive outlook. And I wondered, so is that what it takes to live to be 100 or beyond, thinking positively? Actually, no. Meet Giovanni Corrias, he's 101, the grumpiest person I have ever met. And he put a lie to the notion that you have to be positive to live a long life. And there is evidence for this. When I asked him why he lived so long, he kind of looked at me under hooded eyelids and he growled, "Nobody has to know my secrets." But despite being a sourpuss, The niece who lived with him and looked after him called him Il Tesoro, my treasure. And she respected him and loved him. And she told me when I questioned this obvious loss of her freedom, you just don't understand, do you? Looking after this man is a pleasure. It's a huge privilege for me. This is my heritage. And indeed, wherever I went to interview these centenarians, I found a kitchen party. Here's Giovanni with his two nieces, Maria above him and beside him, his great niece, Sarah, who came when I was there to bring fresh fruits and vegetables. And I quickly discovered by being there that in the Blue Zone, as people age, and indeed across their lifespans, they're always surrounded by extended family, by friends, by neighbors, the priest, the barkeeper, the grocer. People are always there or dropping by. They are never left to live solitary lives.
All right. So it's interesting to think about this in light of the invitation to Christian community. Today we're going to look at the story from Acts 2. It's a famous story about the early church and how they continued in the community of Christ. I often think, Jesus could have come and taught and done everything he did without having community, but he knew that it was so important to have a group of disciples. It was so important to do formation in community, because that's how people change. That's how people are nurtured into a different way of life, a life of giving and loving. And so the early followers followed in his footsteps, and they discovered the power of their worship gatherings. When they worshiped and prayed together, they shared in common bread. It was so important. It was so life-giving for them. And this is what it says here in Acts 2, verses 42 through 47. They devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching and fellowship, to the breaking of bread and the prayers. Awe came upon everyone because many wonders and signs were being done by the apostles. All who believed were together and had all things in common. So in case we miss it, they keep repeating it. They were together, and they gathered together, and they ate together, and they shared together. They would sell their possessions and goods and distribute the proceeds to all as any had need. Day by day, as they spent much time together in the temple, they broke bread at home and ate their food with glad and generous hearts, praising God and having the goodwill of all the people. And day by day, the Lord added to their number those who were being saved. So thinking about this early church and how they focused on love, and that they knew that God's love was manifested in community. They valued community more than individual possessions or opinions. And think of how radical that is for us today, more than individual possessions and opinions. So think of how we divide ourselves in society too. There are divisions around our race or social status or level of education, level of wealth, and there are divisions now even more so because of our sense of political divisions. So if you disagree with me on anything, then we can't be friends. Or if we have a conflict, heaven forbid, we just write each other off really quick, without thinking that maybe there is something for me to learn from the conflict and for you to learn. Maybe there is power in our learning to forgive each other. Maybe there's power in setting boundaries. Maybe there's power in learning to see the world from a different perspective. So think about the value of community, even at a time when we feel so pushed to separate. And the pandemic, of course, came, and it made it really hard for us to connect, because we had the sense that it was fear, and it was true, that if you gathered with people, chances were you were going to get COVID. And nobody wanted to get COVID, and rightly so, but the price we have paid has been really high. Socially, people have felt so isolated. Socially, we're suffering, and it's increased the sense of isolation, which we need community to combat those social ills, the social ills that come from isolation or from only thinking of myself. Somebody after this first service, Dan Dito, was sharing, he was reflecting as a retired police officer. He said, you know, one thing a lot of those mass shooters have in common is they're isolated. They're often isolated from society. Their only society is online. They don't have contact with people. It messes with your mind, and those ideas, those ideologies get stronger and stronger when you don't have anybody that says, you know, maybe you should see things differently. Maybe let's just go out and have lunch and forget about every problem in the world that we have to solve today. Have you been with friends where you were really struggling, and then when you talked, it just seemed like life is okay again? Somehow they didn't fix your problem, but that contact, that human contact, makes a huge difference for us. And so I know that the inflation is telling us the story of lack of abundance in the world, that there isn't enough, or people don't care. That's another thing. Linda Knipe was sharing with me also after the first service that she has written a chapter in a book called, if I'm getting it right, Lies My Depression Tells Me. And it's about this lie of being disconnected from others, that nobody cares. And it's just, or people are always horrible. Have you heard that too? It's just good riddance. I don't need community because people are always hypocrites. People are messy. Relationships are tough. Why do you need that? You just be by yourself and enjoy life. Why do you need all this messy stuff? But it's part of who we are, and it is a lie. It leads us to more depression, and it takes effort. I know it takes effort. There are days when I just say, okay, I don't want to go. But when I step out and say, okay, you can go out, it's okay, it's 20 degrees outside, but you can do it. And then you feel so much better. That's one of the worst things we do to ourselves, especially in the winter. And I remind myself that, you know, staying home in the winter all the time as much as possible is not good for my mental health either. It's important to go out and celebrate community and connect with others. Or if you can't go out, find a way to bring community to your home, because that's another way. I mean, I love these stories that Pinker shared about these older people that allowed others to be part of their lives. That was so essential for their well-being, because even when we reach a stage in life when getting out may not be possible as much, there's that sense that others are part of our lives still. And so today I want to invite us to a couple things. One is next week there's an opportunity for community. And it just happened to be that our youth decided that it was really important to share community. One of the things they identified as we're lacking after the pandemic is community meals. People are still hesitant to gather. So they want to invite you, and they're joining with a Corfu Presbyterian Church. And here is an invitation from Paul.
Hello, everyone. My name is Paul Januszewski, and on behalf of the Youth Presbyterian Church Youth Group, I would like to cordially invite you to Oktoberfest. This is a lasagna dinner that we are having at, of course, First Presbyterian Church, October 16th from 5 to 7. Vegetarian and gluten-free options will be provided. The food shall be cooked here in the church. We will also have an assortment of games and activities for both youth and adults alike to enjoy. So I would like you all to come, please. I can't wait to see you. Have a nice day.
All right, you got the invitation. And we are talking, of course, those of us who plan things without checking the Bill's calendar, you know. We will have a screen there of the game hopefully playing, so you can watch while you're still eating, but don't watch too much. You know, actually you could have fun watching with others. Isn't it always more fun to watch with others if you're watching a game? Think about the invitation also for others. So we want you to think about two people in your life that are important to you, who could join you on this night. So come anytime between 5 and 7 and enjoy the food, but then also think of 2 people you might need to reach out to, do a little extra work, because they need this community, this sense of community. And there are no strings attached, there's no big program. The idea is just to have food and enjoy it. And Eric Raymond is helping be the lead chef. So again, it'll be really good, because my idea, if we were having the lasagna dinner and I was in charge, I would have gone to BJ's. Put them in the oven, heat them up, and we're all good. But no, he's going to make everything from scratch. So he's going to help the youth learn how to make. So if you actually would like to help with shopping, with cooking, let us know too. Talk to Paul. Raise your hand. Say hello. Okay, Paul is in the back. He's ready to help with that. And so I want to invite us again today to think about this core value that we have as a congregation: generous, caring, and loving relationships. It is hard to live it out. A lot of times, we struggle with relationships, but they're so important. The need is so great. One of the statistics I saw, this was from Cigna, which is a health insurance company. They surveyed 10,000 people, 18 and older, and the results are really astounding to me, that 61% reported feeling lonely. 61% in our country report feeling lonely. And when you think of younger generation, 18 to 22, that percentage jumped up to 79%. And I love the timing of this, that they made the results of this survey public in January of 2020. What did we do 2 months later? Shut everything down. And I'm not faulting the response. It's just, it's worked so against our instinct and what God has prepared us to be as human beings. We're made for love. We're made to receive and to give love. And when that cycle of love is broken, we miss out on seeing God in the other. We miss out on experiencing the power of the Holy Spirit. So I'd like us to take a couple minutes, turn to a neighbor. I loved last week that we invited people to do some sharing on the sermon, and then Kathy, who is joining us, it was her first time in our church last week, and Judy, I think it was Judy that came up or talked to you, somebody. Deb. Deb sat next to her. I love that they had a connection prior. And they shared and they talked to each other, and it was really nice. And look where Kathy is today. Raise your hand, wave. Yes, there she is with us singing. And it's beautiful. There's that sense of connection. So anyway, we're going to take a couple minutes. Turn to your neighbors, share with them. If you're not sitting next to someone, move close to someone and talk to them. Or if you just want to reflect on this on your own, that's fine too. All right. You can continue the sharing following worship. Anyone would like to share anything from your sharing? And there were cards also as you walked in. If these are invitation cards to the dinner, so if you need some, there's plenty on the table as you entered. So anyone would like to share? Yes. You okay? You pass them. Oh, thank you so much, Jean. Anyone would like to share anything about any reflections? Yes.
We were just talking, Nelsie and I in this group, to me, the most scary statistic you've covered this whole morning was the 18 to 20.
Yes, the loneliness. Yes.
Those were college days. And
Right.
I studied enough to get through.
Yes.
I would tell anybody, and we told our sons that the biggest part of college, coming from a small town, was every night, every lunch, getting together with people and finding out what their lives were like, their values.
Right.
That was so significant, and I'm horrified that 80% of that age would feel, isolated and not.
Right.
And when you think about it, how different it is, we didn't have the computer screen.
Right. It's a challenge. I think, we have all the technology, but the technology sometimes makes us more isolated. And to see that in young people is really, kind of makes you think, what's going on and how is mental health? I mean, when you look at mental health issues that are arising right now, that sense of depression, and I know some of it is physical. We can't help some aspects of that, but there are also aspects that are very social, and it is leading people to that sense of anxiety. Social anxiety is on the rise. A lot of these things are on the rise because we have these screens. I'm interested in hearing from Kristen, who is in college right now, in that age group, and it is hard. Actually, I was talking to someone who went to a wedding yesterday in Buffalo at the Pearl Street, what is it called? Pearl Street something. Bar and Grill. Okay, so not that. I thought it had a different name. But anyway, he got there and he sat. And as he sat at the table where half of the people were from her side, half of the people were from his side, and then they were supposed to have a lot in common because they were medical people. And then as he sat down, everybody said hi, and they continued to look at their screens. And he said it was really sad. And it wasn't until the groom started saying, let's go to the bar, get something to drink. Let me introduce you to this person, and then really work, because there was that sense. The party wasn't going anywhere because people were sitting there scared of each other and using the screen as a protection in a way. Kristen, do you have anything to share on that?
Yeah, I think people have become really comfortable with communicating online. We sort of forget that I believe that connections are made in person.
Right.
We sometimes feel like that means going outside of the comfort zone to build connections.
So the comfort zone is really a big part of that we feel like, okay, I can sit and communicate without having to, where our self-image too has changed. Like, I have to be dressed nicely. My hair has to look good. People just, I remember those in the old days. Have you seen women go out and looking when they had those rollers in their hair? Do you ever see such a thing anymore? No, everybody, if I'm not looking, I mean, of course, there is the stuff where you see somebody in their pajamas in the store and you're like, what is that? But in general, if we know we're going to encounter people we know, we feel like, I got to put on this kind of sense of being really put together. So there's that fear, the social anxiety of what we look like and how we walked or how we act or what people are perceiving of us. So it has really put us in that place of disadvantage, of community, of sensing that people can see you on your great days when your hair looks fantastic, and they can see you on the days when you had some problems too. It's okay. I mean, we all have those days where, it's just a couple weeks ago I had this, this is really personal. I don't know what it was, but it was something like I got probably a spider bite or something. It was really painful. But the worst part of it is that it was this really big red spot right here on my face. I'm like, how am I going to see people? It looks like I have a disease. And so I put a Band-Aid on it because I was really, it was something I've never had right on my face. Luckily, it didn't last very long. But still, that sense that, oh my goodness, if people see that, what will they think of me? No one would think of anything. They'd feel bad for me. Because that's how I feel. If I saw you with that on your face, I'd be like, oh, I'm sorry, does that hurt? I wouldn't be sitting. But there's that internal dialogue that we have to let go of. That community is so powerful, and it is all about that love that we all long for. So I pray that today that the conversation, the thoughts, especially the example of the early church, will remind you of the importance of personal contacts, face-to-face. Make the effort. Come to the dinner or go to a friend, see someone. Let them come to your place. It's okay if not everything is dusted and perfect and life is not. I mean, all these things that we need, because love is what's at stake here. And the flowing of this currency of relationships is at the heart of God's love for us. So we'll end with a video about love.
In the end, it is love that matters. All else will pass away. We need a thoughtful love, a wisdom that sees and knows more deeply, a faith that trusts in the power of God who lives beneath our wings. Ours is the age of something radically new. It is more than a reformation. It is an evolution in love. It is not simply we humans who are in evolution, but God seeks to evolve, to become more being in love, more conscious, more God at the heart of the universe. This is the truth that sets us free, the light that eludes our sight. We are the privileged bearers of transcendence. God cannot do for us what we must do for ourselves. Empty our lives of the inner clutter and noise so that we may welcome God within. Only when we allow God to be God for us can God save us. Because divine love can do no other than make whole. God's love is unmanageable and unruly. It is creative, spontaneous, and novel. It slips in between our controlling urges and dwells in the unbearable wholeness of our being. What a cunning God this is, who hides in lepers and appears in a poor man carpenter turned preacher. Divine love is beyond what the human mind can imagine or invent. It is not logical or predictable. It has empowered life from the beginning and promises to stay forever because love is ever new, ever more whole, deepening the rich creativity of life's playfulness. We all have a part in this unfolding love. We are all wholes within wholes, persons within persons, religions within religions. We are one body, and we seek one mind and heart, more personal and unified in love. This urging toward oneness is an invitation to evolve the divine. We must enfold the past into the quantum moment and let us aim toward the future. For up ahead is the Christ, rising from the dead in the darkness of night, to become for us the God of the future.
Amen. I invite you to stand as you are able and join me in singing hymn number 438, Blessed Be the Tie That Binds. For the blessing, it is the doxology turned into a blessing from words from Eric Law. May you go to praise God, from whom all blessings flow, circling through the earth so all may grow, vanquishing fear so all may give, widening grace so that all may live. Amen. Please share the peace of Christ with your neighbors.